Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome to the Whole Enchilada. We're happy to have you here. I'm really excited, number one, of how many people have been plugging into our episodes so far. I've been getting great feedback and good ideas for future episodes. And today I'm really excited because we're having our first guest, which up to this point we've had all solo casts as I've worked out the kinks. But I can't think of a better first guest than Russie Edwards, my good friend and business partner. Russie, thanks for being on today.
I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You look excited. I know you were a little hesitant when I first asked, but I'm glad you came. So to give everyone, if you don't know Russie, number one, you're missing out on life. She's one of the most fun, energetic, and brilliant people I know. Russie is one of my business partners. She is the CEO and team leader of Keller Williams Success, which is basically anything with Keller Williams, Northern Utah. She runs and operates that company together with her leadership team and just does a phenomenal job. But that is only a piece of her pedigree. Russie, tell us a little bit about you and your background.
So I've been a realtor for a long time, about 14 years. I got really involved with different organizations. I've always been involved with the association. I've been really involved with I'm currently on the board of directors for our Northern Wasatch Association. I was very involved with Women's Council, which is where a lot of my leadership journey began. And otherwise, I'm a mom to 3 amazing kids and 2 little fur babies, and I'm married and I live in Clinton. So yeah.
Awesome. Love it. It's actually funny. How many years ago was it when you and I first met?
I think it's been about 4 years.
4 years. So 4 years ago, I had an opportunity to have a coaching session with Russie. And the whole time in there, I was like, I have got to be in business with this woman. She's too smart.
And I think at first I was like, I'm not going to be in business with you. I just want you to tell me about my business.
So I'd love to go back to that meeting and listen to our internal voice conversations, because I'm sure they were completely different, where I was like, I got to figure this out. You're like, I got to get out of here. But somehow we clicked and we've been business partners ever since. So the topic of conversation today is around this idea of a balanced life. It's funny, I did a quick Google search just out of curiosity of work-life balance. And there was 1.5 million articles that instantly came up. So this obviously is something that people are talking about. And frankly, I don't think a lot of people are achieving a work-life balance. But I want to focus our conversation around that. Russie, you and I have had some interesting conversations around that recently. Tell me a little bit of why this is at the forefront of our conversation today.
So it's at the forefront of our conversation, I think, because this is something that it's a constant focus for me. And also coaching with agents in our office all the time, I hear it all the time. We hear a lot about balance and people feeling like they're out of balance. And it was a huge focus of mine always, but really over the last 12 months, I had to get really intentional with my time and what that looked like. And realize that balance, as I think this myth around balance, it doesn't really exist. So that's where I think that's where our conversation started today.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's exactly right. This idea of a balanced life. And again, there's 1.5 articles that are going to be contrary to what we talk about a little bit today. But, in the book, the one thing I remember reading that chapter on that work-life balance is a bunk, that it really doesn't exist. And if by chance you feel like you are living a balanced life, you're really missing out on the opportunities that happen on the outskirts, right? It's really not a matter of, and people, again, that don't know, that you love to achieve at a high level. Like if you want to hang out with someone that's super competitive, play board games with Russie. She's super competitive. So for us to win in things, we've got to be willing to get outside of our comfort zones and get out of balance. It's really a matter of figuring out of like, how do we operate when we choose to go out of balance to create something wonderful in our world, and then pull back to where we're not, the other pieces in our world are not suffering. Like you talk about your kids and your family life and your fur babies is, yeah, you want to chase these opportunities, but not solely at the expense of burning those relationships, right?
Right.
So how do you approach that?
So I think for me, it had to be, first of all, again, I think you just have to be so intentional with what you're doing, because I think that for a while you tell yourself the lie that once you hit here, everything's going to be good. Like, oh, I'm going to just hit this level and then things are going to calm down. Well, as a high achiever and as a leader, number one, you're never going to go like, oh yeah, yep, this is exactly where I want to be and I'm just going to stop, right? Because you're not wired that way. I'm not wired that way. Like, I'm wired to constantly be going, ooh, what's next? And then the more you do that too, the more people in your life are drawn to say, what if we did this? What if we did this, right? And honestly, that's what fulfills us, right? But it has to be, I had to just get really, really intentional with what I wanted my life to look like, and then be very like, this is when I'm doing this, and being present in those moments. So the idea, I think, of the balance is that it's not going to ever really be a fully balanced life in the sense that we believe it, but I can also take all these pieces and go, okay, I know for myself, if I don't have a vacation, like in 2020, when all my vacations got canceled, it made a very grumpy Russie. And then this year, I knew going into this year when my husband and I were planning, it was like, we can't just say we don't know what we're going to do. We may not know where we're going to go, but we have to have things planned. And those are my unplugged times. So I know I'm going to work. And then there's going to be those unplugged times. It's taking like one-on-ones with my kids and making sure that they're scheduled, and that during that time, I'm completely plugged in and focused to them, just like I would be if I was plugged in and focused on something that I'm working on.
I think this is a really key point here. Is we think that freedom, or the freedom of time, is magically going to show up down the road based on what we do today. And it's not about free time showing up, or that freedom arriving. We have to purposely create it. Chriselle and I were on a walk the other day, and we laughed a little bit because I remember our first little house in Heber. We were two kids, barely had two pennies to rub together, and every night after work, we'd go walk this dirt road. And I'd always be talking about, we're going to achieve this, we're going to grow this, we're going to invest here, we're going to build these businesses. And in that moment, it was all about where we were going to go. And now some of the times we go on these walks, it's like, remember how simple life was when we were walking those roads in Heber, Utah, and things like that, where it's always like you're always kind of looking on the other side. But it's easy to think grass is greener on the other side, where we should be putting the effort on. If that's what I want, what must I do to create that time? So you talked about time blocking. Walk me through a little bit more how you approach time blocking and protecting that time.
So with time blocking, this is something, Marcus, when I first started trying to be more focused on my time block, I was horrible at it. And everybody is, I think, when they first start. But it really got to the point where I knew there were certain things, like I am a super social person. And so it's really easy, once again, to get caught up in the movement forward and everything you're doing. So I had to be like, okay, you and I for a while had like a battle plan. That part of my battle plan every week that I would turn in was, who am I going to connect with socially this week? Who's a friend I'm going to have coffee with? Who am I going to go grab dinner with? So it was being intentional with that time block and saying, okay, this is my friend time. And I would plan that in. Here's my time with my kids. And I plan that in. Here's my time with my husband. And I plan it in. And here's our vacation time. So there are appointments on my calendar. I don't always know what we're going to do. I let my kids choose on our date nights, that kind of stuff. So I don't know what we're always going to do, or I don't even know always who that coffee date's going to be with, but I know I need it for connection. One of my love languages is quality time. Like, that's my number one. And so to me, I just knew I had to do it. And so it was just being intentional with the calendar, planning things out, having them scheduled. And then I will say too, one thing that I really resisted was, I used the 411, which Keller Williams people know about this, but it basically says your goals for 1 month, 1 year, 1 month, 4 weeks. And the more that I focus on that, I know that I will. So then I'm like, okay, here's the things I have to achieve at work this week, personally this week. And what am I going to do to make sure that I'm hitting those? So the more focused I am on it, the easier it becomes, right? And again, there's times where I'm really, really good at it. There's times where I reschedule my social dates 4 times, but I make sure I always get them in because it's important to me. So it's just clearing the schedule and making sure you've got the important things on for you on the schedule that are important to you.
Yeah, I love this. This is the whole purpose behind the whole enchilada, is this idea of it's not about being balanced. It's about being able to operate at a high level across all aspects of life, like all these pieces that are important to you. And I think you're hitting an important piece on this, is that too many people think time blocking is a business skill. And it's a life skill that we have to learn, right? It's not just putting your business tasks on your calendar and then living the rest of your life just filling it with like, well, I guess I'm home, what should I do? Let me flip on Netflix and binge watch something. It's being purposeful almost with those other things first, because I would think the majority of the people that are leaning into this conversation, there are things more important than your work life, right? And you've heard me say a billion times, family first. And so the idea is, if we're going to learn the skill set to be great at time blocking business wise, shouldn't we be great at time blocking the other aspects of our life that are important?
Yeah, we have to be. And it's funny too, because it's something that so we have part of my Google Calendar is a family calendar that's connected to that. So I'll send invites to people. In fact, it's hilarious. I think I told you this one time that I sent my husband an invite for date night, and all of a sudden I got a decline. And I was like, what? And I guess just because it worked with my schedule, it didn't work with his, but it's paying attention to those times and I agree with you. I think it almost needs to be, those are what should go on your calendar first, because you will always fill the time with something else. So it's just being really clear with where you want the time to go, and knowing, and then, looking at it and taking a closer look all the time to see,
Yeah.
am I getting the time I need?
Yeah, and one of the things you had mentioned to me in our pre-conversation is that one of the things you're working on is being better at what you say yes to, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, I fall in the same boat, I feel like the more successful you are at things, the more good opportunities show up for you.
Mhm.
And earlier on in my career, I wanted to say yes to everything because like I wasn't used to having those opportunities in front of me. And now it's getting better. One of the most important things we can learn is getting better at choosing what we say yes to. Or you could say that on the other side of saying no to more of the wrong things, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because I do think, just like you said, I think that as people see you achieving and they see things you're doing, everybody kind of wants to be part of that, and they want you to be part of something that they're doing. And so it's just saying yes to the right things, and saying yes to, because you want to do something, not out of obligation. We get sucked in a lot to saying yes because we feel obligated, like, yeah, I'll help with that, even though you really don't have the time to do it, or it's not something you're passionate about, and it's going to take time away from things that you are passionate about. So it's saying yes to the right things for sure.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we have to tie to that conversation is intention, right? I really feel like a lot of us that are again leaning into this conversation, we're operating businesses, we're operating at a high level, and it's not like we're saying yes to things with the idea of like I'm saying yes to appease you, even though internally I know I'm not going to do those. I think a lot of us think I'm Superman, right?
Yeah.
I really think I can get all those things done, and my intention in that moment is that I will.
Yep.
But we have to have a reality conversation with this too, of like, with everything else going on in my world, do I have the ability to say yes to this? And that goes back again to, does me saying yes to this match with what's available on my calendar? And going back to that time blocking piece, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's been times where I've actually said to you, like, Marcus, I think I said yes to too many things. And I want the people around me, like, I get huge fulfillment out of helping others succeed as well. So I have a hard time with no sometimes. And so I have to be really clear. Like, I got to the point where before I would, because my instant before was always just like, yeah, sure, I can help with that. Yes, absolutely. And then I'd go back and look at my calendar and be like, I don't know where I'm going to find the time to help with this, right?
Yeah.
So now my go-to is always like, let me check my calendar and get back to you, because I don't want to ever overcommit to something and then have the potential to let somebody down, and let down not only the people that I'm committing to and not able to fulfill the commitments, but also let the people down that I've already made commitments to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as I'm kind of thinking through this, as we're talking about it, I think there are a lot of things we should be saying no to, that we say yes to out of obligation, like we don't want to hurt someone's feelings or we care about them or whatever that looks like. But I want to be clear with our listeners that what we're not saying is that you shouldn't say yes to opportunities that really are in alignment with where you want to go. But if you feel too overwhelmed to say yes to that opportunity, what that's telling you is you're missing something in your world, whether that's a skill, a habit, a relationship. So it shouldn't just be a quick yes or no. It's if it should be a yes, but you don't have the ability to say yes to it, you should instantly go into reflection mode of who am I missing? What skill set am I missing? That if I had that in place in this moment, that would have been an easy yes for me and would have accelerated me further down the road with my goals.
Yeah, for sure. If there's ever anything that you're saying no to because like you're terrified to say yes, but you also know that it's going to get you exactly where you want to go. So there's that like fear and anxiety and excitement all kind of wrapped together. And you find yourself leaning to saying no because you've got other things. That is when it's absolutely time to look at your calendar again. I've heard you say deconstruct your calendar. It's time to look at it again and say, what did I say yes to that's getting in the way of me saying yes to this other opportunity that maybe now I need to say no to?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting where you and I have been working together for a long time. I think we both operate in this way most of the time. And I think there's also time that we catch each other. And this is where I think we make a good partnership, and we have other leaders within our organization that we have the same respect for. Is there's times you see me crumbling, and sometimes I go internal when I'm crumbling because I'm trying to manage all of these things. But it takes somebody in my world like a you or a Robert or someone else in our world to be like, hey, you got to take a step back for a minute and rethink what you're focused on and what you're not. And I do the same with you sometimes, right? And we end up protecting each other. So this is a skill set, a personal skill set you have to learn. And you also have to have a team around you that helps protect you, because it is so easy to get sucked back in, no matter how much time you take and say, this is the calendar I'm going to live by. This is how I'm going to do it. It's so easy to get sucked back into that whirlwind.
Yeah, it is. And I agree 100%. You've got to have the people in your life. I think it's important to have a couple people in your life that are like that, right? It's important to have the people in your life that are going to push you to the next level, which you do a lot with me. I've said yes to so many things that I was terrified about. And I just was like, okay, it's where I want to go. It's going to be good. We're going to get there. And then you've also got to have the people that tell you like, you've got to slow down a little bit and regain focus, right? And I think that's important in both your business and your personal life, right? Because you've got to have those people in your personal life too who go, hey, you don't seem like this is where, like, that you're happy where you're going. What do we need to change? So you've got to have those people, I think, in all different areas too.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. You have to have those people in each of those areas you're trying to excel at. And I think those people need to be aware of the other areas that are important to you.
For sure.
Because it will be really easy for them to make suggestions and recommendations to you that are actually positive for you in that arena, but detrimental to you in another ones. I mean, for a great example, if someone's inviting you to go to the after party of the Super Bowl, and you're like, I got a meeting tomorrow morning, that person at that moment is like, let's go play, but maybe it's detrimental to another goal for your Monday morning, right? So I think it's important for us to share what we're trying to accomplish, particularly as we're building this network of people within the whole enchilada. This is a journey to go on that you need to bring people in and lift people up, and then pull people in around you that are lifting you up at the same time. It's going to be a movement that we're going to do together, but it's about being that person for somebody else, but also identifying who are those people for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And one of the things I've valued with our friendship is there's been absolute times that you are that person for me, where you give me clarity and help me pull away from those tasks I should be focused on. And I show up as that person for you sometimes, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, you do. Same. I there's a lot of times where you get me back in the game. I'm over here in the weeds, and you're like, bring it back. Right?
Bring it back.
Is where you need to be.
So I think this is going to resonate with a lot of our listeners. If you were to coach our listeners today on the first couple steps to move in this direction, what would you tell them?
I would say first things first is get clarity on what you feel is missing, right? Because most of the time when we feel out of balance or out of whack, or we feel stress or pressure, it's because we're missing something in our life, right? So we're missing the connections, we're missing whatever that is. So get clarity on what that is, plan for it. Like, I know I sound like a broken record with scheduling it and being intentional with it, but plan for it. And then I'm going to also say, because this is something that I'm really hard on myself with, give yourself a little bit of grace. right? Because it's not going to be perfect every day. You're a work in progress. As long as you continue moving forward and it's getting better, not going backwards, then you're on the right path, and give yourself a little bit of grace. And I think there's ways to also, the other piece of advice I would say is there's ways to incorporate all of your worlds kind of together a little bit too. Like I do things with my kids that probably I would have never thought to do before I got into a position where I was constantly moving forward in what I was doing. So I think a lot of it is like incorporating, budgeting and money habits, and your kids helping plan things, and just incorporating and seeing and having the people in your world be part. I think you can cross those worlds over more than you think you can. But then also just be present. If work's off, turn it off and be off, which is so hard.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. And again, that's where that grace comes in.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's super sound advice. Thank you so much for spending time with me and being willing to be a guest on the Whole Enchilada. I'm proud to be on this journey with you, not only in the Whole Enchilada, in that network, but just as business partners and friends. I'm just super grateful for you. For those of you plugging into the conversation today, I hope we're coming from a place of vulnerability, that we're not showing up to say, hey, look what we've done, follow our path. We're inviting you to join us on this journey with us, because neither myself or Russie, we're not perfect at this. The purpose of this network, again, is, hey, let's help each other. Let's join this journey together and make it happen. So thank you guys for plugging in. Look forward to the next episode. And don't forget, go live life on your terms. Thanks so much.